Pozzuoli's 8-kilometer crack just connected two volcanoes, and scientists are calling this the most terrifying geological event in modern history. March 13, 2025, emergency dispatchers received 847 calls in just 12 minutes. All reported the same thing: steam erupting from cracks that appeared overnight in streets, basements, and parking lots. But here is what has volcanologists in complete disbelief. That steam is not random. It is following a fault line that goes 8 kilometers straight down into the earth, and it leads directly to Mount Vesuvius. The ground rupture did something geologists thought was impossible. It physically connected Europe's supervolcano to the same mountain that buried Pompeii. Within 48 hours, Vesuvius recorded its first deep tremors since 1944. Now, 3.5 million people are trapped between two volcanoes that are no longer operating alone. They are operating as one. But here is what monitoring teams are not saying publicly. They are calling this the first domino in what could become a Mediterranean volcanic collapse. If pressure fails in one volcano, could it trigger catastrophic eruptions in both? And are we already too late to evacuate? On March 13, 2025, a magnitude 4.4 earthquake struck the Campi Flegrei caldera at 3:42 in the morning local time. It was the most powerful tremor recorded in the region in more than 4 decades. Residents across Pozzuoli woke to violent shaking that sent furniture crashing and windows shattering. Pictures fell from walls, car alarms shrieked through the darkness. Families stumbled into the streets in their nightclothes, terrified and disoriented. But the true shock came in the aftermath. Stanford University researchers begin analyzing the seismic data using cutting-edge artificial intelligence techniques. The system expands the earthquake signature and reveals a staggering 54,000 microtremors hidden within the data. Conventional seismographs miss them entirely. The caldera is not just shaking, it is tearing itself apart from within. The Stanford analysis paints a terrifying picture. The earthquake triggered sudden activation of Campi Flegrei's ring faults. These are the circular fracture systems that bound the edges of the caldera. They have lain dormant for centuries. Now they are shuddering back to life, releasing bursts of seismic energy that ripple through the surrounding crust in waves. But the real bombshell comes when researchers trace those seismic ripples to their ultimate destination. The data shows the quake opened a deep conduit extending 8 kilometers into the earth. This underground pathway is funneling pressure waves from Campi Flegrei's magma chamber directly toward Mount Vesuvius. Dr. Tatiana Ventura, a geophysicist at Stanford Earth Sciences, describes the implications in stark terms. The geothermal reservoir operates as a sealed pressure system. When the caprock fractures, it creates pathways for fluid migration that can destabilize connected volcanic networks. The seal has broken. The pressure is moving. The discovery triggers immediate alerts to volcanic monitoring stations across Europe. Italian authorities contact emergency management agencies in Rome within hours. This is not isolated unrest. This is not a routine seismic event that will settle and fade. This is systemic destabilization of two volcanic systems that scientists believed operated independently. The rupture in March 2025 has accomplished what geology textbooks considered impossible. It has physically connected Europe's supervolcano to the mountain that destroyed Pompeii. Nestled just west of Naples lies one of the most dangerous volcanic systems on Earth, Campi Flegrei. The name translates to burning fields. The caldera spans 8 miles in diameter and represents the culmination of 600,000 years of eruptions that have repeatedly reshaped the Italian landscape and beyond. The origin of Campi Flegrei's destructive power traces back to two of the most violent volcanic events in European geological history. The Campanian Ignite eruption occurred 39,000 years ago. It ejected 200 cubic kilometers of volcanic material into the atmosphere. To understand that scale, imagine a wall of superheated ash and rock traveling at 300 miles per hour across the Italian peninsula. The eruption blanketed Eastern Europe in thick layers of debris and triggered global climate disruptions that lasted for years. Entire species disappeared. Human populations nearly collapsed. But Campi Flegrei was far from finished. 15,000 years ago, the Neapolitan Yellow Tuff eruption unleashed another 200 cubic kilometers of volcanic fury. This second apocalyptic event carved out the caldera that now looms beneath one of Italy's most densely populated regions. 3 million people live directly above the scars of these ancient catastrophes.
Dr. Jeep Mastro Lorenzo of the INGV Vesuvius Observatory explains why this caldera is uniquely terrifying. Campi Flegrei's geological structure represents a pressure vessel containing magma chambers at depths ranging from 3 to 8 kilometers. Unlike cone volcanoes, calderas operate as interconnected systems where pressure changes in one chamber affect the entire network. This interconnectivity makes Campi Flegrei fundamentally different from Vesuvius or Mount Etna. The magmatic plumbing beneath Pozzuoli is a labyrinthine network of chambers and conduits, all linked together in a delicate balance of pressure and instability. When one part of the system becomes agitated, the effects ripple outward in unpredictable and potentially catastrophic ways. This is not a mountain that might explode. This is a pressure system that could collapse. And now that pressure system has connected to the volcano next door. For residents of Pozzuoli and the surrounding region, living in the shadow of Campi Flegrei has meant coexisting with the constant specter of volcanic unrest. Historical records document 4 major periods of agitation since 1950. Each follows a disturbingly predictable pattern. Each grows more intense than the last. The cycle begins with ground uplift. Scientists call it bradyseism. As magma and hydrothermal fluids push upward from the depths, the Earth itself begins to swell and rise. In Pozzuoli, this is manifested as a gradual but inexorable tilting of the land. Ancient Roman ruins that once stood on dry ground have slowly submerged beneath the waves of the harbor. The sea has swallowed history while the land prepares to create a new catastrophe. Next comes seismic fury. As pressure builds within the caldera, the surrounding crust begins to crack and shatter. During the Unrest crisis from 1982 to 1984, Campi Flegrei unleashed a barrage of 16,000 earthquakes. Some were powerful enough to send residents fleeing their homes in terror. Buildings cracked, walls collapsed, families slept in cars for weeks. Alongside the shaking, the caldera ramps up its gaseous emissions. Fumaroles and bubbling mud pools belched forth noxious fumes laden with carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and hydrogen sulfide. The air becomes thick with the acrid stench of the underworld. Residents report headaches, nausea, and burning eyes. Thermal anomalies mark the final stage. As magma rises ever closer to the surface, ground temperatures spike in pockets across the caldera. Some zones have reached temperatures hot enough to cook an egg on bare rock, an ominous reminder of the ferocious heat lurking just below. NASA satellite data has tracked the inexorable swelling of Campi Flegrei over decades. Since 1950, the caldera has inflated by a staggering 4.3 meters. Current uplift rates have now reached 2 centimeters per month. That represents a 340% increase over previous unrest periods. The beast is stirring from its slumber. But the events of March 2025 shattered all expectations of what that awakening could entail. Within 48 hours of the ground rupture, the signs of destabilization became impossible to ignore. Thermal monitoring stations along the newly formed fault line registered temperature spikes of 12 degrees Celsius. The readings suggested something that made volcanologists pause. Magmatic fluids were moving between the two volcanic systems. The underground pathway was not just a crack, it was becoming a highway. Steam emissions from long dormant vents surged simultaneously across both Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius. Output increased by 340% in less than 2 days. Vents that had been silent for decades suddenly roared back to life, sending plumes of vapor into the atmosphere, visible from Naples. But the steam itself told an even more alarming story. Chemical analysis revealed the jets were now laced with sulfur compounds. This was the telltale signature of deep magmatic gases rising to the surface. The chemistry had changed, the source had deepened. Then came the tremors from Vesuvius. For the first time since its last eruption in 1944, the infamous volcano began experiencing deep seismic activity. These were not surface vibrations, these were pressure waves originating from within the magma chamber itself. The mountain that buried Pompeii was waking up, and it was waking up in direct response to what was happening 8 kilometers away. Civil protection authorities activated emergency protocols. For the first time in Italian history, both volcanoes would be treated as a unified threat. Monitoring teams began operating under a new assumption. What happens to one volcano will affect the other.
Thermal imaging revealed the most disturbing development of all. The underground pathway was expanding. Steam pressure was fracturing additional bedrock along the corridor. Seismic activity increased each time new sections of rock gave way. The connection was not stabilizing, it was strengthening. Scientists watched their instruments with growing alarm. The geological highway between Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius was actively developing, widening, deepening. The two volcanic systems were merging into something that had no modern precedent, and the process showed no signs of slowing down. The idea that Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius could be physically linked is not entirely new. Geologists long suspected these two volcanic systems, along with others in the region, are part of a much larger interconnected network hiding beneath southern Italy. The theory remained unproven for decades. March 2025 changed that. Seismic tomography studies have revealed a vast magma accumulation layer stretching across the entire Campanian volcanic arc. This reservoir of molten rock lurks at depths of 8 to 10 kilometers beneath the surface. It spans dozens of miles, and it connects volcanic systems that scientists previously studied in isolation. The evidence suggests that in ancient geological eras, these volcanoes operated as a single unified system. They shared magmatic fluids between their chambers. Pressure in one chamber affected the entire system. When one erupted, others responded. The volcanoes of Campania breathed together. Historical records carved into rock layers support this theory. Ash deposits from Campi Flegrei's catastrophic Campanian ignimbrite eruption 39,000 years ago show signs of coordinated activity with nearby volcanoes. The chemical signatures indicate a coordinated release of pressure across the entire network. Multiple volcanic systems erupted in sequence. The region convulsed as one organism. But in the intervening millennia, these connections fell dormant. Successive eruptions sealed the pathways. Magmatic conduits cooled and solidified into rock. The underground highways closed. The volcanoes of Campania slumbered in isolation. Each became a ticking time bomb. Scientists studied them separately because they behaved separately. The March 2025 ground rupture has changed everything. The sudden reactivation of a direct physical pathway between Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius has effectively rewound the geological clock by thousands of years. Ancient connections that took millennia to seal have reopened in days. The two volcanoes are now once again operating as a single, unified threat. The isolation that provided scientists and emergency planners with a margin of safety has ended. The network is active, the pressure is shared, and the implications are nothing short of terrifying. The Naples metropolitan area is home to over 3 million people. All of them now live in the shadow of a newly awakened supervolcano system. The cafes still serve espresso. Children still walk to school, but the ground beneath their feet trembles with increasing frequency, and the emergency plans designed to protect them have become obsolete overnight. Italian government evacuation protocols were developed to handle an eruption from either Campi Flegrei or Vesuvius individually. The plans assumed one threat at a time, one evacuation zone, one direction of escape.
The March 2025 connection has rendered these assumptions dangerously inadequate. In a worst-case scenario where both volcanoes erupt simultaneously, the logistical challenges become almost insurmountable. Roads leading away from Campi Flegrei funnel directly toward Vesuvius. Evacuation routes overlap and contradict. Traffic models show highways choking within hours. Communication systems would falter under the load of 3.5 million people attempting to flee at once. Emergency services across the entire country would be overwhelmed. The current situation on the ground offers little comfort. Steam vents are opening daily across Pozzuoli. Roads buckle and crack as the earth shifts beneath them. Buildings show new fractures each morning. Residents live with constant reminders that the pressure below continues building, but the danger extends far beyond the immediate Naples area. Atmospheric models show that a coordinated eruption could blanket much of southern Europe in volcanic ash. Flights would be grounded across the Mediterranean, and respiratory emergencies would surge in cities hundreds of kilometers away. The region's vital agricultural lands face burial under meters of volcanic debris. Crops that feed millions would be destroyed in hours. The resulting food crisis would ripple across the entire European continent for years. The Italian government has raised the alert level for both volcanoes to the highest possible classification. An eruption could be imminent. Emergency planners now work around the clock, devising contingency plans for simultaneous evacuation of the entire metropolitan area. It is a logistical challenge with no precedent in modern history, and time is running out. Scientists monitoring the connection between Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius have begun using a phrase that sends chills through emergency planning offices across Europe: the first domino. They warn that what is happening beneath Naples could be just the beginning of a cascade of volcanic awakening across the entire Mediterranean basin. The region is home to numerous volcanic systems beyond the Italian mainland, including Mount Etna in Sicily, Santorini in the Aegean Sea, and Stromboli off the Italian coast. Volcanic islands are scattered across the Mediterranean floor. All of these systems potentially share connections to the same deep geological networks that have now reactivated beneath Campi Flegrei. Seismic data suggests the magma reservoir feeding Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius extends far beyond their immediate boundaries. If the pressure released from these two volcanoes propagates through interconnected underground systems, it could trigger a chain reaction of eruptions across the region. The pressure would seek escape through every available pathway. Such a cascading event would occur on a scale not witnessed since the dawn of human civilization. The last time Mediterranean volcanoes erupted in coordinated sequence, there were no cities, no infrastructure, no millions of people living in the blast zones. This scenario would be unprecedented. Dr. Mario Yuto, a volcanologist at the Vesuvius Observatory, describes the situation in stark terms. We are dealing with a completely new paradigm in terms of volcanic risk. The connection between Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius has the potential to impact millions of people and radically reshape the geography of southern Italy.
Volcanologists and geophysicists from around the world are now converging on the region. They arrive desperate to understand the implications of this geological reawakening.
But they face a fundamental problem. No modern monitoring system has ever observed volcanic systems reconnecting in real time. The scientific community is operating in completely uncharted territory. The question has transformed. Scientists no longer debate whether there will be an eruption. The evidence suggests eruption is inevitable. The question now is how far that eruption will spread and whether anything can stop the dominoes from falling. The question that now haunts emergency planners across Europe reduces to a brutal binary. Will the coming eruption be a localized event, a tragic but manageable disaster confined to the Naples metropolitan area, or will it become the catalyst for a volcanic catastrophe that reshapes the map of Europe as we know it? The geological connections that have lain hidden for millennia are now active. The sealed pathways have reopened. The pressure that accumulated separately in two volcanic systems now flows freely between them, and the consequences of this reawakening will be felt far beyond the Italian peninsula. Every day brings new data, new tremors registered on seismographs, new steam vents photographed by satellites, new cracks measured in the streets of Pozzuoli. The monitoring stations record numbers that continue climbing. Thermal signatures are growing hotter, sulfur concentrations are increasing. The physics of what is happening underground follow laws that cannot be negotiated with or delayed. The volcanoes of the Mediterranean are stirring. The future of an entire region hangs in precarious balance. International response teams are positioning themselves at staging areas across southern Europe. Hospital systems are preparing for mass casualty events. Shipping lanes are drafting contingency routes. Airlines are updating their ash cloud protocols. The machinery of disaster response grinds into motion while the ground continues to swell. 3.5 million people wait. They watch the streets beneath their feet. They smell the sulfur drifting from new vents. They feel the tremors that come more frequently each week. They know that the ancient forces below have reconnected. They understand that what happens next has no modern precedent, no historical playbook, and no guaranteed outcome. The caldera that has erupted catastrophically twice before is building towards something. The mountain that buried Pompeii is responding. The pathway between them grows wider and hotter with each passing day. Scientists who have spent careers studying these volcanoes in isolation now scramble to understand how they behave as one. The models they built no longer apply. The assumptions they made have crumbled like the fractured caprock beneath Pozzuoli. History offers little comfort. When Campi Flegrei last erupted at full force, it nearly ended human presence in Europe. When Vesuvius last awakened violently, it erased cities in hours. Now, these two forces are connected, their power combined, and their pressure shared. The ground heats, pressure builds, the corridor expands, and tremors intensify. The only question remaining is when that pressure finally becomes too much to bear and whether the world is ready for what comes next. Amazing discoveries. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Share this video with friends and join the discussion on what these findings could mean. Your thoughts and questions are important, so let's explore incredible mysteries together.